We'll have the fire chief's report first. Chief Brown.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Holmes.
Mayor.
We will. You'll hear from him. Guaranteed you'll hear from him.
Voice has changed.
I just want to put this in context that at all times over the past decades, the people of Vermilion have been exceedingly well protected by their dedicated fire department, which is actually pretty remarkable considering that they're always have been volunteers. They certainly don't do it for the pay, they don't do it for the pension, they do it strictly out of an obligation to help their neighbors. And this is volunteerism at its finest. But in my opinion, as Mayor and Safety Director, this department will need to evolve. The city and the region are growing, that's without question. Construction of the new Vermilion Fire Station 1 was built with the evolution of the department in mind. A dormitory was added, a large meeting room, full kitchen. They were all included with an eye to the future back in 2018. My hiring of the department's first full-time chief, Chief Brown, was part of that evolution, brought about by the attention of leadership to grow, by the requirement of the attention of leadership to grow the department. This department just could not grow reasonably with the type of part-time chief we had in the past. The bandwidth just wasn't there. And I gave Chief Brown 6 goals upon his hire in 2022. One was to explore the opportunity for the VFD to evolve, including the possibility of a dedicated EMS function. The question is, what are our options? And I want to make it clear that this assignment is in no way because of any dissatisfaction with our current contracted EMS provider, Life Care Ambulance. It's simply meant for the city to know its options. And there are other considerations for reasons why the VFD needs to position itself for evolutionary growth. And that is the possibility of regionalization of agencies, none of which has been seriously addressed yet, I want to make clear, but realize that the city of Vermilion is the largest small city in the area, and we are likely the hub for any future regionalization of resources. Chief Brown has taken action on the EMS assignment that he would like to announce his first step. Now you'll hear from the chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. As the mayor mentioned, it was actually in my second interview chief's position that this was brought up and talked about. In 2023, I was tasked by the mayor to study alternatives for EMS coverage in the city. The objective was to show a brief history of the EMS services we've had here in the city, detail any potential other providers, and then finally detail the potential options the city's fire department could provide. From that, we've decided to have a feasibility study completed by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. First and foremost, at no point, as the mayor mentioned, we are not disparaging the service that we're currently provided by Life Care. They do their best to keep us informed of any changes or any updates that we would need. We assist Life Care when called on with our people. They're appreciative of the help, and we appreciate the partnership we have with them. In 2022, we shared a radio grant for over $600,000 with Life Care. Once or twice a month, their on-duty crew will actually come to our Monday night training sessions, familiarize themselves with us and vice versa. So in short, we have a very good working relationship with Life Care. As public entity leaders, we're tasked with completing our everyday tasks to make the department function, while also looking to the future and trying to forecast what may be needed. We plan years in advance for truck purchases, as we brought up at the last meeting. We plan for major equipment purchases, such as turnout gear and SCBAs. It only makes sense to plan for a time that paying a private company for our EMS needs is feasible. The feasibility study, which I do have a copy for each of you, will aim to provide a comprehensive, data-driven analysis regarding the integration or expansion of EMS with VFD's operational framework. The specific areas that will be studied are analysis of existing delivery, current and projected service demand, defining any operational requirements, financial impact, regulatory and legal framework, impact assessment on our existing providers, implementation planning, and community growth. Regardless of the study's outcome, this is non-binding. It's simply a way for us to plan, I think, for the future. Again, is it in our best interest to take over EMS? I can't say that. But it's simply a way for us to plan and look at it, have a third party come in and help us with that. At this point, again, if you have any questions, I'll certainly answer them for you. I'll give you each a copy of the contract that's been proposed by the Ohio Fire Chiefs. I have spoken with 3 departments that have utilized their services. Each one of them had nothing but good outcomes from their situation. I spoke with the Norwalk Fire Department, who was probably the closest provider that used them. I spoke with, it's not Wood County EMS, but it's an EMS agency in Western Ohio. I spoke with the Cambridge Fire Chief, who they're actually in just their 2nd year of running EMS out of their fire station. This study does a lot. Talks with the partners, your mutual aid partners that you would deal with. They'll come in and speak to all our members, certainly administration. The one thing that comes from this study, not only is a detailed plan on how you could move forward if you choose to. The city of Cambridge, for example, was told in year 1, you will make about this much money. You'll recoup. And the fire chief told me they were dead on. He said, scary how close they were. He said the 2nd year they're actually collecting more than what was predicted. But the point of the study is, again, to give us an idea, a planning tool to look forward if we were to go into the EMS realms. If you have any questions, please fire away. Again, if you have any questions over the week after you go through this, please give me a call.
Any questions, John?
Just as far as our mutual aid partners, are any of them currently their own EMS providers?
Vermilion Township obviously is their own.
Right.
You know, and one of the things that we've talked about, I've talked with Chief Triana numerous times. You know, if this was something we would do, we would need them. You know, we would need them for help. They would need us for help, and that's just kind of the way it goes. Not only from the fire side, but from the EMS side. You know, right now, Life Care's doing a pretty good job in terms of being able to cover everything. They have occasionally they get overburdened, just like any other system, but for the most part, they've been very conducive to work with. So.
I might add that we are in a gap, Vermilion's in a gap area. Back in 2018, I believe it was, when North Central EMS told us that they were going to increase our rate by a lot. Finance Director Hendricks and I went shopping for an alternative, and there were virtually none. We're in an area where we're too far west for some, too far east for others. We went to Life Care, Finance Director Hendricks and I, we met at their headquarters, and they originally said no. Said, you're too far out for us. Then they called us back after a couple of weeks or something like that and proposed the plan that we now have. So we were lucky, but I don't know how long we can be lucky. So exploring this alternative, I think by Chief Brown is an enlightened idea. It's a course we're going to have to look into sooner or later.
Is this something that we, everybody had an opportunity to digest, and then we come back next month for health and safety, we can go through it and keep that on health and safety? I know from my experience, you know, working in townships in Lorraine County, we got Columbia, they got their own, Eaton Township, they got their own, Carlisle, and I think LaGrange. Yeah, and those townships are smaller.
Yes.
But growing.
Right.
Especially Columbia and Eaton Township. A lot of building going on out there, residential building. And I spoke to both chiefs out there, and again, they say in the beginning half, some growing pains, but at the end of the day, it's definitely benefited the township and the residents by having their own EMS paramedics provide provide for their residents, so.
I think, again, I don't wanna give you the idea that we're gonna make a ton of money doing this, that's not the case, but a good system, will be self-sufficient, so.
And they've talked about that on, they're not getting rich, but they're paying for equipment, they're paying for training, they're paying for, uniforms or whatnot, so it's definitely paying off in that realm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if we can all just go through this and then we'll come back to this, next month. Okay. If that's it,
My monthly report.
okay, go ahead and
real quick.
continue with your monthly
Yeah,
report.
so through that, 35 calls in May, which is becoming the norm. It's higher than what it's been in years past, but about the 30 to 35 range is kind of where we've been at. We're still up about 42% from last year, and I don't see that stopping, especially with summer coming up. That will certainly increase some more calls. Just personnel items, 4 firefighters that were in the firefighter 1 class passed their test last week. Firefighters Lane, Greg Stark, Art Mead, and Andrea Bartow, all 4 passed their course. They will take firefighter 2 probably in the fall, which we are looking to maybe hosting the class at the station because we have about 7 people that want to take the class. I'm hoping we can host the class at our station just to make it a little easier for those guys. Firefighter Miles, Brady Dotson, and AJ Rantham are just about done with their EMT class, which will be done, I believe they test on the 26th of June. So they've been going at that. And just as a side note, those 3, John Miles, Brady Dotson, and AJ Rantham, are 3 of, not only are they going to class about 10 hours a week, they're probably also our 3 highest responding members in the department. So each one of them makes up about 70% of the fire calls. So hats off to them. Training, today I just started a class today. It's called Event Security Planning for Public Safety Professionals, sponsored by Lorraine County EMA. It's through FEMA, and it deals a lot with looking at risks, things you should kind of plan for in big events. Miscellaneous, let's see, again, we're still looking into the truck, the ladder truck. June 27th, 4 of the members are gonna go to manufacturing plant in Columbus for Sutphen to just look at the process there. They've got a couple of trucks that are coming off the line that are just about complete for other departments. So they're gonna get a tour of the factory and kind of look at the process. So that's all I have. If you have anything else, I'd be happy to answer it for you.
Any further questions for the chief?
I just had one, it's kind of related to something, Chief, a little further down the line. We're discussing utilities as far as the contractors who provide utilities in town, the telephone poles, wires, cable, electric, those type of things. And one of the things I have heard, and I guess I want to ask is, when you have I know in some instances, there's some difficulty with contacting people when you have wires on the road or poles down, or do you have contact numbers for all these various?
Well, unfortunately, we'll still see some phone poles with AT&T on it, or Frontier. So sometimes it is kind of hard to track down who it is. We had an issue last week with a train on Sunnyside, I think, Sunnyside Road. Yes. For whatever reason, there were some wires that were hanging low over the tracks, and the train found it. Tore up a couple of poles, there were wires down all over. Thankfully, we called Ohio Edison, they came out, and he immediately said, yep, those are cable. And he took care of it, moved it out of the way for everybody so the road was open. But there are times it's tough to differentiate whose wires, especially if it's electricity, we know.
Right.
But the communications, cable, things like that gets a little dicey sometimes.
That's all, thank you.
Any other further questions, comments for the chief? All right, thank you, Chief Brown. Next, we'll move on to the police chief's report, Chief Hartone.
I want to introduce the best police chief in the area.
Good evening. So we received the ODNR award. We awarded $32,450.33 for the police boat. That's down a little bit from last year because Sandusky PD got their dirty little mittens into the state's little pool of money, so it kind of cut down everybody's award, but we did get that. The DMV scam text is all the rage. Keeps going around. You may have seen it on your own phone where it says, hey, it's the DMV and you didn't pay a fine and log here. It keeps coming around because it's working. People keep calling for us. So please, we have a BMV, not a DMV. That should be the first tip off. But when you get those texts, it's junk. So ignore it. The auction's up and running. We started on Friday for surplus city equipment. We're looking forward to seeing how the fire department's at CJ. Right there, you're a Jeep guy.
Yeah, I want it.
So, some of the various things around there, if you go to govdeals.com, just type in Vermilion, and I'll bring up the Vermilion auctions. So that's, it goes for a 2-week period, started last Friday. Range fire, we had range fire last week, range fire was complete, we got hurt, that was a positive, everybody passed, that was another positive. Safety Town started today, so they're gonna be out and about, they'll do their little town walks and all that. Graduation is on Friday, June the 20th, morning sessions at 9:30, afternoon sessions at 1 p.m. So any members of council would like to be there for the handing out of the helmets. I know Councilman Gabriel's been there. It was fantastic. You get the jackets.
Life jackets.
Pretty nice. Fish Festival, obviously, is coming up this weekend. Drive careful, be safe, or stay away, whatever floats your boat. Friday night, we're doing the fireworks. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to your safety briefing on Friday night. He's in charge, by the way. And then following up too, we're a little bit behind, but Councilman Holmes, I believe it was Matt Thompson from Nicholson Drive, addressed an issue about the conditions of Nicholson Drive and roadway 3 as far as where Herc was moving out, and the conditions of the road and the conditions of the on the road. So I met with Mr. Thompson at his place, and we discussed his concerns. We also have a vested interest down there because we have the Vermilion Police patrolling the property that we rent out for weddings or high school graduations or things like that. So obviously we have a vested interest too, aside from professional interest in the conditions. We've been monitoring it. I haven't seen some of the conditions that were explained to me, but I sat down, last week I sat down there and just watched trucks coming in and out looking for, conditions, debris, things left in the road. Nicholson is a pretty rough road, always has been, but, so if there are conditions that are a detriment to traffic, then that's where we intervene. If they're more cosmetic, that's where the building department handles it. Like if contractors need to be cleaning up after themselves. So the service director and myself have both been working, trying to get that resolved a little bit better. So it's an ongoing process, we're still working on it. Hope we get it, but gotta be before April 10th, 2026.
If, let's say, road debris off the trucks coming off the truck, mud, dirt, gravel, who do they call? They call the police department?
If it's large scale, if it's a traffic hazard, you should always call us.
Okay.
Something like that, we can get down there. And if it's something that, it's a situation more tuned in for the building department to handle, then we'll notify the building department.
Okay.
If it's something like, really like, holy crap, we're going over there, then obviously we're gonna deal with that down there.
Okay. Would you mind addressing another question I have?
I think, let's hold off on that because
Okay.
it's under streets and buildings, and we'll wait till
Okay.
streets and building.
Oh, it is, yes, it is, yes, thank you. All right, that concludes your report?
That concludes my report.
Any questions for the police chief? Comments, concerns? Good luck to you both this coming up weekend, and hope all goes well. Thank you. That completes health and safety.
Okay, I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Finance Director Hendricks has a report.
Thank you, Councilman Lucas. We actually have a very important current event to report on. The information started coming out of Columbus last week on House Bill 335, which is related to the state's budget bill. It has a provision in it called Property Tax Relief Now Act. And the part that's of concern to the city, especially with some of the recent changes that were made to our utility rates, as well as the collection of the various forgiveness provisions on our income tax, is the potential elimination of the ability to collect inside millage for school districts and also municipalities. All political subdivisions, with the exception of townships, the way it's proposed right now, would no longer be able to collect that inside millage. So for Vermilion currently, that means just under 1.5 million for the general fund. I'm sorry, total for the city. It's 1.2 million for the general fund and $134,000 each for the police pension and the bond retirement funds. So that would be close to $1.5 million that would be coming from that loss of inside millage collections, and about 1.2 of that would be coming out of the general fund. So any hopes that we would have that could have been used to cover other losses may be eliminated. It would, the way the legislation is proposed at this point, it would be effective January 1st of 2026. So really no phase in time on that. It appears to be on the fast track. Another part of...
If there's any doubt to this, I might want to comment that if you have been reading the local papers, a similar situation is in the case of bed taxes. Bed taxes that normally go to the visitors bureaus and the shores and islands type groups is also being oriented in the state and being participated in by the county, appropriated for other uses. And that's legitimate. I think last October, we cautioned council that they might have been after the money because our general fund was so rich. A little bird told us that they may be looking at it. And this is a follow-up to that. That is indeed, seems to be a prevalent situation now. So, as Finance Director Hendricks said, it's something to heed when making decisions on what revenue we think we'll get.
That brings up excellent points, because also a part of this legislation is a revamping of the County Budget Commission structure under Ohio law that does give them significantly more power to make adjustments to effective millage rates or collected millage rates. Also, currently, for example, if a school district or a municipality subdivision wants to put a property tax issue on the ballot, there's a resolution legislation process that goes through. The county auditor certifies what would be raised by that measure, etc. And then it goes, of course, through the ballot process. There are proposed provisions that they would also need to go through the County Budget Commission for them to make a determination whether it should go, whether they feel it should be on the ballot or not. So it's really changing the game of revenue collection and putting a lot more question marks, things that we could count on before we just aren't able to at this point. Charter millage, that is something that in the language, it appears that that would stay in place. And the city collects annually $3.3 million in millage that are considered part of our charter millage, that makes up that balance of up to the 10 mills that could be part of that, that inside millage. So for us, that is significant funding for both the fire operation and apparatus. We have some recreation funding. We get 5 mills to the general fund for current expenses. And so those, that's, at this point it sounds like the charter millage would stay in place. But again, it's very early conversations. to see what will happen with that. So I wanted to make that, to be something that you were aware of, because it is very concerning, especially with some of the recent actions taken, that could potentially be no replacement funds available. And other than that concludes my report.
Questions for Finance Director? No question? That'll conclude the Finance Committee.
Legislation will open, review of ordinance 2025-35, traffic control map, and alternative read.
Thank you. And all this was put on for is in case anybody, to give people extra time to go look at, once again, that traffic situation over there. Obviously, we had a resident show up and say, hey, is it really needed? He's been living there for 26 years, I believe he said, and he had issues with the way it was proposed. And then, of course, when Councilman Herron was here, he had concerns about one of the neighbors' ability to pull in and out of their driveway. So really, I don't think there's much discussion needed here tonight. It was put here mostly as a way for council people to go back and visit that location and see for themselves, just to make sure they understood what it was, and give any other neighbors who might want to show up and have an opinion on the ability to speak on it this evening. So outside of that,
But it looks like Mr. Zander's here. Were you planning on speaking to this evening?
Only if there was questions.
I mean, I thoroughly looked through this immediately when it first came up, and I think I've made it known that I think this is pointless. I don't think we should change this. I spent a little over 5 hours over 3 days walking around talking to people that lived over there. Just immediately I knew how I felt. I did some more research, I felt the same. I figured I should go talk to the people it actually affects. And only one person out of the 24 that I had talked to thinks that we should change it. And they admittedly were friends of the people that requested it. I see no point in this. I hope you guys agree and do not change this parking. Because to change parking for one person seems, or one household I should say, seems pointless to me.
Anyone else?
I do think this kind of came about due to like one particular home. And I think you mentioned when you came here the last time that you would do your best to sort of mitigate that problem. It was your cars that were actually causing the problem. Not that you were doing anything wrong, I don't know if you were doing anything wrong, I'm accusing you, but it was your cars that were causing the issue that brought this to our attention. In a way.
It's part of it, yes. There's a couple cars that parked there, and there's something going.
come up.
There's something going on. My understanding is the gentleman that doesn't even live in the city, he's there to visit his elderly mother. But when he backs out, I got this after the meeting, when he backs out, he can't see, but if you look at that, there's no way you can't see. Even if there's a vehicle there, if you stop before that, you have 100 and some odd feet before you get to that, you can see over them. So that's my big issue is you're going to take away 2 parking spots from the neighborhood. And I've been here for 25 plus years, and you're gonna take away two spots from the neighborhood because someone can't see when he backs out of his driveway on a public street that has permission to park. If we're gonna do that, I mean, we have a lot of streets that have permission to park. and if you allow this, I'm really afraid that it's going to open up a can of worms. So that's where I stand. I don't want my parking spots taken away. My neighbors don't want their parking spots taken away. But in the larger picture, if you let one person do this in one spot, what stops 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people from doing it. And you're going to be doing this every week. Every meeting, you're going to be talking about this. So that's just my opinion.
I got the sense you come here twice. I think you're gonna be a good neighbor, and I think hoping that you guys can work this out amongst yourselves, and we're not passing laws that now burden the police department.
We really try to leave a half a vehicle at the beginning or the edge of the driveway, especially on garbage day, because that's where they put the garbage cans. But if you went down there at any point in time in the last meeting, you could see the cars parked there and how they are. They're not butted against the driveway. The only time that they're butted against the driveway, in all honesty, is on a third Thursday, a fish festival, something that's very large going on where that street is just jam-packed with vehicles. Other than that, we all try to move on.
Is this still tabled?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, it'll be headed for its final reading on 16. Right now, what's the...
Yeah, at this point, I'm really inclined to either obviously vote no or leave it tabled, whatever we gotta do to,
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go through the chair. My feeling will be, I will ask for a motion to untable it, and then we can give it its final vote on this.
I'd like to give you an opportunity to work this out amongst yourselves.
And that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I rarely see a gentleman who comes to mow the grass and this is his mom. That if again, as far as I know, that's the person that it is. No one other than no one has come around to speak to me about it. So I'm assuming that's the person that was doing it, because that's what the rumor has.
Thank you. Anyone else? Next item, part-time, as needed, assistant clerk. And Mr. Gabriel, I'm going to leave.
Yeah, so after a brief discussion with fellow council members here, we are looking at the position. We already have a position established of a part-time council clerk, and that position would be in discussion for Melanie's benefit when she's on vacation or has to take sick leave, or it has to be with attending children or family members. That would provide us with an opportunity to not only start a transition of somebody who could take care of the filling in of that process when she's unavailable, and keep council rolling in a smooth manner that we've been accustomed to all these years. So the only thing I will say, and hopefully that will meet with everybody's approval, I mean, the position is established. The only thing we will have to do yet, and again this will be on the 16th, is adjourn into executive session and confirm the salary for the position, and we can offer that position then at that point to the public and start taking applications for people who may be interested in that. And I just wanted to, because we've discussed it, I just want to make sure that the public can put in minutes, the public is aware that that is an action we're going to be taking.
And it's, just to clarify too, like it's a very limited, like PRN as needed thing. It could be one day a month, it could be a week for 1 month, or it could be nothing at all for 6 months, correct?
Right. Yeah, it will be literally, there'll be a brief,
At her discretion to use.
a brief training period, and then from that point on, it will be as needed. Would be my anticipation.
Anyone else? That's good. And with that, the next thing, the mayor wants the cannabis zoning recommendations for planning commission.
That's correct. Thank you, Councilman Howell.
You're so welcome.
All right, over a year ago, in fact, it might have been 2 years ago, council asked the planning commission to recommend locations for cannabis activity in the city if council chose to permit cannabis activity. I passed that request along to the planning commission. Since then, council has either had a moratorium on cannabis in Vermilion, or the Ohio State Legislature has been developing guidance for municipalities. Since then, the moratorium has come to an end and the legislature has legislated. I advise the planning commission to proceed with their recommendation to council. The planning commission asked the administration if we, mostly Service Director Valarius and I, would give them some guidance regarding appropriate zones. So Service Director and I sent the board a summary of the state legislation, and we also made zoning suggestions and provided a zoning map. We assured them that it was still up to, that it was a recommendation to council, and it was still up to council to decide whether or not to accept their recommendations or to just not allow cannabis altogether, but all they had to do was make recommendations. And that whatever recommendations they made would be passed by the law director for review to make sure that they are compliant before council wastes time debating something that isn't. June 4th, the volunteers of the Planning Commission met specifically to discuss their recommendations. They spent a good deal of time and discussion and brought some of their own research, and they moved that the cannabis cultivators be permitted in zone I2 only. And that motion passed 5-0. The Planning Commission also moved the cannabis distributors be permitted in zone B3, but only east of the railroad overpass by Liberty Auto Wash. Service Director Valarius commented that because this is basically a zone within a zone, that a separate zone 5 would probably need to be created for this purpose. And they passed that motion 5-0 also. And I have sent that recommendation that I just summarized to the law director for review. And at that time when it comes out, I'll let you know that you can have fun. Okay?
So where would B5 technically be?
It would
East of
be
the,
basically, Service Director Lars, on Liberty, east of the Liberty Auto Wash.
that whole thing would be B5 out there, that's B3 now?
Yep, anything that's B3 now would change to another separate zoning, B5, and it would permit everything that the B3 would permit and marijuana distribution.
And they honestly, they spent a lot of time on this back and forth. They had good reasons for narrowing it down a little bit. So even though they're volunteers, they really did their homework and gave us a good service. So I thank them. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor?
No, I would also just include that would also include or exclude the Drug Mart Plaza. So just for starting right at the bridge going over.
East of the bridge.
East.
So,
I have one question.
Yeah.
Mayor, has the administration received any feedback from any vendors wanting to grow marijuana or sell it?
That's a good question, Councilman. At first, when it was passed by ballot statewide, we had quite a few inquiries, and I have to say probably most of those inquiries in the building department were from kids in their basement that wanted to go legal all of a sudden. But since the true terms of what it would require have become known, we have had virtually nothing.
Every now and then you say something funny.
Entrepreneurs.
Any other questions?
Right here.
Go ahead.
So as we move east, we gotta keep in mind that the schools, churches, anything that's in that area, parks.
That's one of the reasons why it's passed under the law director, because she will have to make exception zones for the usual, what is it, 200 feet or I forget what it is, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why she has it right now. She
Okay.
told me today she's reviewing it.
All right.
Anyone else? But yeah, it doesn't surprise me no one's came forward and asked about coming in town for this. I brought it up when we talked about the moratorium that I don't think the market here could sustain one, and that we shouldn't pass a moratorium because there's no point. No one's gonna want to come here to do this anyways. And it sounds like that's about along the lines. I've read the minutes and then I watched the meeting. The planning commission was I think the only one I've missed since it's been on the agenda for almost a year. It's the only time that they actually talked about it, so shame on me for missing that one meeting. But you mentioned then that the state has passed legislation. I'm unaware of any legislation they passed to control it. They've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah.
something passed the Senate onto the House, but nothing's ever gone through that I know of. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not legal enough to qualify, to make a qualified opinion of exactly what they said, but they passed a legislation on the amount of volume that can be done in certain areas. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, in the Senate, but not in the House. Nothing's changed yet. And I brought this up when we first brought the moratorium. We have a general guideline of where they're gonna allow these. It's gonna mimic the medicinal facilities, so we knew where they could be. You know, I think we should have done something back then. We've wasted a year and done nothing with it.
Yeah.
I don't understand the reasoning by keeping those facilities, if they wanted to move in, out of some of these other areas in town. There's a lot of empty shopping spots in the various plazas that we have. I'm sure the landlords there would love to invite somebody in. I don't see any reason why to mimic out or keep them out of there.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask is there anything keeping them from moving in right now? If somebody came forward and said, hey, I wanna set up a
There's no
dispensary
city.
here, or I wanna set up a cultivation here, can they do that right now?
Yeah, that's a good question that we ought to ask the law director, but right now, there is no city ordinance governing it one way or the other.
That's what I thought, and this has been lapsed for what, it's June now? So for 5+ months,
We've had
there's nothing on the books.
nothing.
That's why it drove me crazy when Planning Commission hadn't talked about this for, if it's not a year, it's 11 months. It's been on there for a long
Sure,
time.
yeah, about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
and they were waiting for either the moratorium to end or Ohio to decide what they were doing. And once there were no more reasons not to, they complied with what the council asked to do, which was make a recommendation. And then you may not like it, you may wanna just forget it altogether, but that's your ball now, once the law director's done.
sure, and that's why I bring this up, is because council at that time, and forgive me, I could be wrong, is they passed the moratorium. I voted against it, but it was so the planning commission can plan while there's a moratorium. It makes no point to wait till it's up. Now let's decide where we want to do it. But it's besides the point. It's just, but I was curious if there was any legislation that I might have missed.
No, there was
Nothing's passed that I know.
No. It was mostly in response to, I think Councilman Herron's suggestion that they put a moratorium on it while the Senate or whoever mulled this thing over. And once they were done, I think the moratorium naturally expired anyway.
Correct. Thank you.
Any other questions? With that, legislative committee will be closed. Turn it over to the clerk.
All right, I'll call the Utilities Committee to order and turn over to John. I'm sorry, Council President, talk about contractor accountability.
John Wicks. Now, so we called around, actually I'd normally call around to see what other municipalities do in this instance, and believe it or not, they're just like us, they really don't do anything. You know, you've got some PUCO issues you have to deal with too, because, you know, the rights are protected by organizations above our pay grade. But that being said, there are communities that have some very basic things, and one of them was the one I kind of included with your packet this week, and it not that I want all, this is kind of over the top with all of it, but there's parts of it I do like. I mean, the safety procedures are outlined as far as what they have to set up for traffic protection and all that, interference in the rights of public right of way, but most important, I think the one thing I'm looking at is damage to public or private property and restoration of public right of way. Those are the two items, really the only two things on here outside of the safety feature that I'm the most interested in. I sent you, I don't know if everybody got the photos this morning, I apologize for the late hour of sending those, but and that was on a very short walk from where I live. I mean, that's like 2 blocks and there's wires hanging everywhere, coming out of the ground, telephone pole was replaced, the original hole, the other one was left right where a sidewalk meets the road. I mean, it's, and I'm not saying all the utilities are left in that regard, and they're not, but the ones that are, you know, it's kind of shameful, really, to leave something in that condition, especially a hole or a pit like that. And again, I just on the front of our property, which is right across from the new chart room going in, there's a telephone pole that's been broken, sitting there for I think 2 years now, maybe longer, where the replacement pole is in, but they can't bother to send somebody out to move the wires over, and it goes on and on. Like I could, if I were to drive around, the wires hanging here and there that are abandoned. It's, you know, I guess how used, or how crowded or cluttered up are we gonna allow these utilities to get before something happens? You know, before a kid gets clotheslined or something, you know. That's my part of it, you know. One of my things is, I'm kind of big on property management, and we like to keep things orderly and in place, and I feel like people coming to our city who are installing things should have that same consideration. And that's why I suggested this. Now, there's gonna be a lot more work to go. Again, we have to touch base with the PCO and see if, you know, if we're within our rights to even do this. But like I say, there's at least one other community that has taken upon themselves to at least say, you know, you are responsible for this. And even things as simple as contact numbers for our safety forces, so that if there is a pole that can, you know, if we can get these poles identified and there is a pole that has an issue, like the one that the fire department and police experienced, and then we can have an immediate contact kind of thing. So these are all features of legislation that, if it's possible, that I would like to see us at least consider.
Two things. One, with the numbers that you're talking about for like the incident you had, correct me if I'm wrong, because we run into this in the county. A lot of the utility companies are piggybacking off like the power company's pole. So the number that's on the pole is to Edison, but none of their stuff is identified. But Edison allows these, you know, Frontier, AT&T, and so on to tag on their pole to get, you know, across everything. So the numbers that you have on file for Edison, they work, but not everybody's stuff is labeled. So that's one of the, probably the issues, and I would think that would be an Edison issue, not an us issue. The other thing is, don't we have something on the books now that if they damage the right of way and installing or whatever, they have to replace whatever they tear up as far as ground or underground type thing?
Yeah, but the problem is they'll come into town and you don't even know they're there. They come into town, they do their thing, they leave. We get a phone call a week and a half later from the property owner saying, hey, Breeze Line or whoever was in our yard boring a new cable line, and they tore our yard up and left, and that was that.
Do they not come through you guys when they come into town to do work?
No.
And
we get a
Because
lot
it's a
of
public
calls.
utility, so they come in and they do
I
their
got
thing
it.
and they get out.
So only when a project is being done and they're installing something new, you guys are really involved, so to speak.
Right, when they come in through the citywide installation, they'll come in, meet with us, and, we'll go over all of that, and they have a contact, and when they do it that way, then we have somebody to call, and they've been very responsive to that. But it's when they come in, do a couple here, do a couple there, they get out, and then.
Well, that seems like a really
Yeah,
easy
chase it.
fix. I mean, if we were to put something on in the future of, if you come into town to do work, you gotta notify the building department, so we have a track record and a log of who's been in town.
Yeah, if I may, Councilman,
There you go.
there's another consideration too, which I think is that they lean heavily on state law, state legislation that gives them permission to act as a utility. And they basically tell us, we really don't have to talk to you, and which is not helpful at all. I also might say that there've been a couple of really acutely bad holes around town. One was in Edgewater in Vermilion on the Lake. I think the other one was on Douglas. And Administrative Assistant Jody Booker took it upon herself to call PUCO and some others to find out how much longer are they gonna leave that pole there without moving the lines over. And they explained that each of the 5 companies have to give permission to move that line over, and they aren't calling the PUCO back. So Administrative Assistant Booker spent, tell me if I'm wrong, days on the phone trying to call these places till I finally had to tell her she had other work to do to get back to that. But it takes days to get the utilities all called to move it over, and I don't know that should be our job.
Sure. If it's any help to you fellas, I believe Lorraine County 911 has an entire list of numbers to contact for all the utility companies.
And I'm sure.
I'm assuming you guys do
We've
as
had
well.
kind of the same issues, and, usually we just call dispatch and they contact who we think it is. So,
Tony,
No,
go ahead, Councilman Holmes.
So I know with my right of way, in my neighborhood, all the lines are buried. and I call them tombstones in my yard of abandoned phone, and I always like, who do I call to get those removed? Because every time we get somebody coming in, a new headstone pops up, and I would like to know how we get those to disappear.
I don't think you can get them to disappear because the abandoned lines are still in them and in the ground.
Right.
I would say before our meeting, I did a little bit of research, and it really, everything was pointing back to the Ohio Public Utility Commission as being responsible for enforcement. And I would say that a lot of what we're discussing is not the electrical company. They're not leaving our lines wrapped around, it's the cable company. And we have two, we have Spectrum and Breezeline, right? There's no other cable company in the city that can operate, to my understanding.
I think there's been several over the last
That's
6
the
or 8
problem.
But
years.
like WOW got bought out by
Wow.
probably
But all their
Breezeline.
stuff's still here.
But they buy it. So at this point, Spectrum and Breezeline should be held accountable for what's been left dangling and wrapped around poles. And if we start by maybe contacting those two, maybe a letter from the mayor to somebody saying, get out here and clean this up. It may work, but those really are our two problems. It's gonna be the cable companies. It's not the gas company, it's not the electric company. So if we can focus on those two entities, and maybe we call PUCO and get them involved on our behalf as well, we might have some success. Go ahead, Tony.
I see your point, and over the years, you know, I've called several times, especially like these cable companies, internet provider companies. Put in a report, say this is what you got a line hanging in front of this address, and they'll say, okay, we'll get there in the meantime, you can tell the homeowner to wrap it around the pole, or tie it to the pole or
Mhm.
something. It's safe, you know. And so you report it again a week later, and they say, okay, we'll get to it. I mean, they don't get to it. Now, Jody got everything moved, I know, because she called them basically every day. And like the mayor stated, she put a lot of time in getting that pole on the corner of Minnewawa and Liberty taken care of, because that pole was snapped, as probably most of you know. And frankly, a dangerous situation. But she called each of them nearly every day to get that moved.
Because they weren't responding to PUCO.
Sure. And I'll tell you what happened. My son-in-law works for Spectrum, and for a little bit, he was on their maintenance team. So when there's an outage, they come out and they slice the wires and they do whatever they can to get your connection back together, right?
Mhm.
And then another team's supposed to come back, and I think that's actually the maintenance team. They're supposed to run all new wires from one termination spot to the other, and that's not happening. Or they're doing that, and they're just leaving the old wire just dangling, and then somebody wrapped it around the pole probably when they first came out to fix it, to get you back up and running, and no one's going back and removing that.
Right.
And that's really honestly the problem. It's not, we need to focus on Spectrum and Breezeline. And I think if we do that, if we focus our energy on those two, like I said, we may see some improvement.
Is it Bright Side?
Or is it, maybe it's Bright Side, whatever the,
Right speed,
Bright
yeah.
Speed.
the one that's, their headquarters is 2 streets over, I guess, or their little hub.
There's Charter too, and I don't know.
Charter and Spectrum are all the same.
CenturyLink.
You've got several different names for
Right
all
speed.
these.
Is that what Braggs means?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I would recommend that the city make a complaint to the Public Utilities Commission and maybe somehow CC those different entities that are providing internet and cable service to our residents, and then we start from there and see if that helps. That's really, I think that's where we need to start.
I'm going, and if it's okay, I'm going to just keep heading down the path of seeing where our responsibility lie, right? What our abilities are, because we've only been looking at it for 5 days or so.
I have a feeling this is gonna be like the railroad, you're never gonna be able to cite it, I don't know that, I just have a feeling that, I think the mayor kinda hinted to, that they're sort of protected under some state code.
I love a challenge.
So they just need to learn to be good neighbors. All right, any other discussion? I'll go ahead and close utilities.
Okay, I'll call streets, buildings, and grounds to order. The first item, of course, is Mr. Holmes' cul-de-sac.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So, been receiving some phone calls regarding a cul-de-sac in Ward 5, and which brought up again, a discussion that had happened in the past with Councilman Hollavax and some legislation. And I had asked the chief to speak on, the rules and regulations of parking in a cul-de-sac and that has a fire hydrant and how that affects the neighborhood.
So, really when we passed the no parking on the fire hydrant side of the road legislation, that was more directed toward Valley View. That's really the primary concern when that legislation came out. One of the requirements that we have is, the areas have to be posted. If they're not posted, we're not gonna write parking tickets for people for something that have a sign for it. So the focus has always been on Valley View. We don't have all of the areas posted for that. The particular incident that you're speaking, I mean, you can't park in front of the fire hydrant, the fire hydrant zone, we know that. I don't know, if you do that down on Shady Lake, you're gonna push all that parking, to the north side, on that little tail that you're talking.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a solution looking for a problem. Again, we're getting back to, do we wanna change or do something different for, one person? I don't know, I don't have an answer on that.
Okay. I guess my question again is if the fire hydrant is in the cul-de-sac and someone chooses to park in front of it, that's clearly a violation.
Correct.
And the residents need to call and not to be afraid to call and report that, correct? Because they're not putting you guys out
Yeah.
if they call the police department directly or 911. They're not putting people out, okay? And that's what I've explained to folks in that neighborhood is you need, if there's a car parked in front of that hydrant, is it clearly a violation?
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no cars parked anywhere near that cul-de-sac and it's open to emergency vehicles, then, it's good to go. I think some of the other questions or concerns were that there were so many cars in the cul-de-sac.
Correct.
And, as long as they're not double parked, side by side within the cul-de-sac, there's really nothing other than, there's nothing enforceable that you guys can do.
No. If they're legally parked, they're legally parked. Yeah, it does get cramped, and the particular house you're speaking of has a lot of people that live there, we got a lot of cars.
Correct.
A lot of heavy cars. and-
Correct.
That have a spot park. It's the same type of issues we get on Arlington.
Yes. Yep.
And they're, not a great answer, they're legally parked. If they're in front of the fire hydrant, no.
Okay.
You should call us, we'll take care of that, but it gets a little cramped down there, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Anybody else seeing that in any other problem or like to bring up legislation regarding cul-de-sac parking? I don't think that's something that we want to take on. Because again, the clear statement is if you parked in front of the hydrant in the cul-de-sac or any street, you need to move your vehicle ASAP.
Councilman Holmes, is there mailboxes that are on the street, are they,
There's mailboxes also.
is it just prohibited from parking in front of mailboxes, 8 to 6, 8 to 5, I believe?
Right.
But not that I don't think we want our police department driving around looking for infractions
Correct.
like that. I think you guys have other things to do.
And I assured the residents, if there was a vehicle parked in front of the fire hydrant and there was a fire and the vehicle was in the way, that the fire department come up with a way to remedy the issue about getting to the.
They do seem to enjoy that.
Fire chiefs.
I don't think they park there again.
No, they wouldn't, their car would be filled with water.
Right, at least not
So-
for the hoses.
Right. So I would encourage folks in that area to call you if there's a vehicle parked in front of the hydrant. Okay. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Rowe? Okay, and then the last item is, I know it's a broad term streets program, but the only reason I brought this up is because we do have engineer design services for both Pineview and Brunham Station, and we transferred money, and I just didn't know if there was any, are we too late to get the ball rolling on proceeding with either of those streets, or?
Council authorized the design to start.
Right,
We
but,
had survey crews out there doing work.
but I mean, the bidding and all that, like, by the time, it won't be till next year, is
It'll
it?
be next year.
Okay, that's what I guess that was the question of the hour.
I mean,
I didn't know how quickly we could go from one to the
I
other.
would recommend waiting until next year because the costs will get higher as you wait closer to the end of the year. But that's council's decision.
I do have a question. So there are two streets that were out for bid, right? Are we, is
Larchmont and Dog.
it the bid over or,
No, it's going out next week.
so it hasn't gone
been
out?
yet.
Okay, I thought it went out already.
We gotta wait until Safe Routes to School is done. And there's some sidewalks that haven't been completed yet because of guy wires.
Okay,
So, because we're tearing up some of those drives. So we know that to accept that project before we go to work on Larchmont.
I thought Larchmont looked like all the sidewalks were done.
Well, with the driveways,
Okay.
we're done. And now we have to put underground. So,
So next week it's gonna go out for bid, both? And then how long is the bid, how many weeks do they have to submit?
we made it to the bid openings on the 9th of July.
Okay, so by the beginning of August, we'll have something in front of council? And those are very small
Small streets.
streets, we're not talking about really a whole lot of money.
Any other items? Mr. Hack?
Good evening, Mr. Gabriel, members of council and administration. Ms. Woods, Homer Taft, 3972 Edgewater Drive. I won't read my entire missive to you on roads tonight, much to your relief. But I do want to express some concern that what we've been doing for many years is kind of throwing a dart at something and trying to figure out what the problems are. And it's a very imprecise and inaccurate way to do that. To quote Councilman Craig Fortner about 20 years ago, at that time we'd left this roads in a mess for 10 years or more, I think. For 30 years or more, we have severely neglected the streets in our town and failed to maintain them. And it's only going to get worse until it's fixed. But you can't begin to know what to fix if you don't do a complete study and metrics of all the roads. We have 80 to 100 miles of roads in town. From Adams and Adams and Jackson rather, on the far west side, all the way to Nicholson on the east side, and lots of places in between. The roads are a mess. Deeply thankful that my road's a mess and soon will get fixed. But a lot of people aren't getting fixed. And we can't afford it on what we're doing and the way we're doing it. The only way to do it, in my opinion, is with a bond issue and defining a revenue stream. You get about 1.25 million or a little more out of the 0.5% of the income tax. There's 600,000 that's been coming in from a 0.5% of the forgiveness, which could continue. That was never taken away by any action of council. And there was nothing in that ordinance, I should say, that requires that. And you could have other revenues. My own personal opinion is you could do 2 to 3 mils of levy, and that would produce 900 to 1.35 million, which would produce up to $24 million in bond. But you're going to have to do something to catch up. And then you're going to have to ask the folks for permission. The good news with bond is as revaluations occur, it goes down. It's a defined amount of money to pay off the bond, but you get all the streets now. And if you don't do a catch-up, then you're going to be getting further and further and further behind, keep digging that hole deeper. But it all starts with having a study. What is the condition of each road? What is the condition of the base? What is the traffic on that road? How much is it used? What is gonna be the cost of repair? What is gonna be the cost of maintenance? What's the condition of the water lines and the sewer lines? And so put them in, don't measure twice, measure the price. The city is very wisely, with the VOL project and with the Edgewater water line coming in, decided to hold off fixing Edgewater until they dig us up for the water line too this summer, so that they don't repair the road right after they fixed it. If we look at it, when we're authorizing Brownhelm Road, Brownhelm Station, I would point out to you that I think there's a 10-inch sewer stub at Brownhelm Station. If you have substantial development in the area, everything runs that way. So we're talking about gravity feed. 10 inches ain't gonna make it. And you also have massive stormwater problems. If you don't plan those before you start to build a road, you're gonna go back and tear it up and do it over and waste money. It starts with doing the study. I beg you, now, do a complete, comprehensive study and quantification of every infrastructure cost we need, so that you know what it is you're shooting at. And then you'll also have the information that allows you to make far more intelligent decisions about what needs fixed when. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any other items? Okay, with that, Streets, Buildings, and Grounds is adjourned. Thank you.